We have an opportunity to spend a few minutes this morning with the minority leader of the Idaho State Senate, and that is Michelle Stennett. And she's going to outline, well, there's a lot of people, in fact, I should point out, that are concerned about what are called exploding targets. And a lot of people use this when they're actually on the range or they're doing some target practice. We've had some people actually talk with us before about concerns that these things, especially during a dry period, could lead to, well, a major wildfire. And that's a huge concern during the dry summer months in the state. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And you are listening to Magic Valley this morning. Minority Leader, I just wanted to say welcome back to our program to get things started.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation. Good to be with you again.
Now, we're talking about exploding targets, and while they're not necessarily, I think, common, there are some people who do like to use them. We're talking about possibly some restrictions for safety reasons that you're looking at.
Yes, and I would caution that they are becoming more and more common, and that was our concern. The Office of Emergency Management and our Idaho Department of Lands have noticed that there is an escalation. We had 8 wildfires in Idaho last year alone that were caused by exploding targets. And as you know, the Kerry fire, the Sharps fire that we had last year, burned 65,000 acres at nearly $10 million, and a real threat to lives, property, and livestock. And that was caused on state lands by an exploding target.
No,
so they're very concerned about it, and so we wanted to try to address that this year.
Would it be just an outright ban, or are we just talking on public lands that this would take place?
Just on public lands. What we're trying to do is, and what came to my attention through my sheriffs and the Department of Lands during the Sharps fire, was that the state fire restrictions don't exactly match with federal. And the state land that this fire started on was surrounded by BLM and Forest Service, and they weren't glaringly different, but there was not a commonality about the prohibitions on it for using these devices. And so they said, at least as far as for us in law enforcement and for those of us that have worked collaboratively on the land, because oftentimes federal land representatives will take care of state lands or vice versa, depending in the state, we should have some uniformity in the law. And so what we are just doing is prohibiting explosive targets only during the designated fire season and only on public lands. This does not impact private property. It doesn't impact shooting ranges. But we did want to make the Idaho lands and that code similar to the federal, which just meant that during the designated fire season, which is the same for both federal and state, it's the middle of May to the middle of October during the peak season, and that it was to be a misdemeanor, and that the judge at his discretion, aside from financial recovery where possible, would be able to do community service where a person who may have caused that could go back and help in the rehabilitation of the areas that were burned. And that, in essence, is what we were trying to do with this bill.
Is this a tough sell to the majority Republicans, or are they getting a lot of feedback as well from, let's say, local firefighters that don't like putting these fires out?
Well, the cost has been in the millions, and just not only that, but it's just the loss of wildlife and habitat and livestock and property. I can't tell you how many times we've evacuated our own valley due to fires, and so these are not inexpensive. We do not need to, for sure. To answer your question, the feedback I've gotten is everybody understands that the danger of exploding targets and that they need to be controlled, especially during those peak fire periods. Now, you can shoot them out in the rest of the year. So we're talking about 5 months of the year, and the rest of the year it is allowed. But for those really peak hot seasons where we are dealing with such catastrophic fires at great loss financially and to people's resources personally, we wanted to be able to at least have the state lands and the federal lands match as far as the prohibitions during that period.
Got about a minute before the break. Sportsman reaction, any interesting reaction coming from that community?
I haven't heard a lot, but many say because they've seen how impactful it is on their ability to hunt and fish. Because not only do you have the problem of the fire, but as you have heard all over the country, but here also that afterwards with rains and so on, you have mudslides and just a real loss of, I know our rivers around my area have been trying to recover for years due to our wildfires. It takes a while for the landscape to heal itself from the scarring from these fires. And so the Office of Emergency Management said the big part beyond wildfires is to manage for the risk of flooding and mudslides, which also poses a huge danger, and that it usually takes about 3 years after an incident for it to begin to stabilize and rehab. And so for sportsmen, that's been a big concern because how impactful it is on wildlife and fisheries.
We're going to take a short break. We've got more coming up. Michelle Stennett says she can spend a few more minutes with us. She is the minority leader in the Idaho State Senate. She's going to chat with us just about a couple of other issues she thinks might be important in the waiting days of the legislative session. We're at 24. We've got a short break. It's 8:40. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310 KLIX at newsradio1310.com. You're listening to Magic Valley This Morning.